And we met this young man, a young 18-year-old from Kilkeel in County Down. And even just as soon as I walked into the room, there was a lot of people there. I said, that's the young lad that sent me the email. And he came and gave his testimony, and I was really, really amazed with the wisdom and the insight and the depth of vision that he'd been given into the divine mercy at such a young age. So please put your hands together for Michael Donnelly.
Hello, everybody. Well, as Don said, I'm Michael, and I'm 18, and I hope to become a priest someday. But don't worry, I'm not here to preach to you today. That part's coming tomorrow. I'm giving another talk tomorrow, but no, today, I'm coming to you as a witness to hope, and as a witness to divine mercy. I grew up in a family of 7, and I suppose you could say that it wasn't always easy, and we had our problems, and we really did suffer together. In fact, some of my earliest memories are of me suffering as a child. But some people ask me about my childhood, do you regret it? No, I don't regret anything that has ever happened to me, because it has made me who I am today. And I hope it's not too bad. but that was my first introduction to Christ and to his cross. My relationship with Christ started and is centered upon the mystery of the cross. And so I'm happy that I was introduced to the cross at such a young age. But it did have its fruits as well. I even remember as early as 5 years old going around telling everybody that one day I'm going to become a priest. I used to tell people, no, I'm not getting married. I'm not having children. I'm just going to say Mass. That was it for me. But then as I grew up, I realized I've got some brains, and I'm going to use them as well. But God had other plans, so I did. At around 14 or 15 years of age, I guess you could say that I had my real conversion experience. Christ called me to himself. I was praying the night before my first exam, and I had an experience of God, and I immediately thought to myself, hey, this exam's going pretty well tomorrow. But because I've got God on my side. But I did do well in the exam, but that was the turning point in my life. I started to think about God more often, and I found myself praying every night and every day, and I found myself really changing. My experience of God in prayer became more active and profound. There's I don't know whether you know it, but there's a story in the life of St. John Vianney. And one day someone came up to him and asked him, what was the quickest way to heaven? And he turned around and said, like a cannonball. Go straight up. And it was sort of like that for me. God didn't give me any detours along the way. He led me straight to himself. But it was in and through prayer, and a more active prayer life, that I discovered God. I went out to find him, and he came and met me. So he did. It was also around that time of my life, about 15, 16 years of age, that I really knew that I was called to the priesthood. I knew because when Christ calls, you hear, and you know that you are called. And I recently described my calling as, my discovery of my calling, when God called me, he was as subtle as a brick through a window. You just know, so you do. But at first, I really wanted to become a monk. I wanted to give my entire self to God and to devote myself to contemplation. In particular, I wanted to become a Franciscan, and you can thank Padre Pio for that. But throughout all that time, I never ruled out diocesan priesthood. And as I looked further into the Franciscan way of life, no offense, I do know there are Franciscans here, I realized that I fell in love with St. Francis and Padre Pio, not the Franciscans. But and then when I started to realize that, I thought, right, I'm becoming a priest, I'm becoming a diocesan priest. I want to get into seminary. And I wanted to get in at 16 as well. I went all around the country. I actually went to the four corners of Ireland, looking for priests during confessions. And always at the end I asked them, can I get into seminary at 16? But they all said no. Every single one of them. Not one, not even Father Cahill said yes. He said no. But I started thinking, can they not see that I'm only fit to be a priest? Are they blind? But a little favourite saying of mine, is that I am a priest. I was born a priest, and I will die a priest. I just need ordained. That's all. Thank you. And when I was out in Medjugorje last year, I was at confessions, and at the end of confessions, the priest asked me, "So, young man, what do you want to do with your life?" And I started laughing, and I said, "I'm becoming a priest." And he looked at me silently. He looked at the side. He turned his head and slowly said, "Well, why not? You might as well." But you'd be forgiven for thinking that I'm actually not called to the priesthood by the reaction of everybody, and that I just can't take a hint. But I know that I'm called. I have a little motto of mine. I trust the one who is leading me, even if I don't know where he's leading me to. And that's my little motto I'll take throughout life. For the priesthood, for me, it's not a sacrifice. Everyone asks me, what about, you have no children, you'll have no wife or anything like that, but the priesthood for me is not a sacrifice. It's the fulfillment of my deepest desires. Thanks very much. Even just last weekend, I was at my diocesan vocation weekend, and during our last Mass, I had a profound grace, profound moment. I truly realized, deep in my heart of hearts, that yes, I am being called to the priesthood. And it was as if I heard these words of the gospel in my heart. I have called you by your name. You are mine. And I was just overwhelmed by the experience. I was almost in tears. It just really touched me. But they were tears of joy and thanksgiving. And obviously an important and pivotal development in my life occurred when Divine Mercy entered it. You could almost say that everything almost started from there. In fact, it was this time 2 years ago, almost exactly, that I was introduced to Divine Mercy. A new Divine Mercy prayer group was starting up in my parish, and by providence, really, I decided to show up half an hour early. I was the first person there, obviously, and I offered a hand to help out, to set everything up. Well, they grabbed that hand, and I'm trying to escape ever since, but I can't. I'm only joking, obviously. I started doing readings from the diary of St. Faustina, and things really took off from there. People always ask me how I find the Divine Mercy, but I never found the Divine Mercy. Divine Mercy found me. So it did. As I got deeper and deeper into the message of it, I realized that everything is contained in 2 words. Divine Mercy. Says it all. My first experience of the Divine Mercy Conference, as Don was telling you, was in Drummondine in Newry in 2009. And afterwards I was talking to Don, and I was telling him about how I wanted to become a priest, and he said to me, "Well, maybe someday in the future we might see you up here listening to you give us a talk." that day has arrived, Dawn, sooner than you thought. And also, anyone who knows me well enough would know that there are two loves in my life: the Divine Mercy and Our Lady. The only two. And I'd be leaving out a great deal if I didn't mention Our Lady's role in the development of my life. You know, I don't even leave my room without my rosary beads. And someone once asked me what I'd do it was my aunt actually, what I'd do if I ever met a woman. You know, would I get married instead of joining the priesthood? Well, I just said, there's only one lady in my life, Our Lady. You know, so sorry ladies, you have no chance. There's a story, I can't remember where I read it, but I read it, that says that Jesus is in front of us and Mary is behind us, pushing us to Jesus. Well, sometimes I complain, about having a wee sore back sometimes, so you can imagine just how often Our Lady has to push me. She's always at it. She has to try to keep me on the right path, and what a path she has to try to lead me on. And I was in Lourdes last year as well, this is Medjugorje, and one night I was praying at the grotto, and I felt so powerfully Our Lady's love for me that I just burst into tears. I tried to hide it from the people I was with. I was with a group, but obviously they found out. They asked me if I was okay, and I immediately replied, if you knew just how much Our Lady loved you, then you would cry of joy too. And it was only when I sat down to write my speech that I remembered one of Our Lady's messages at Medjugorje. If you knew how much I loved you, you'd cry of joy. I can testify to that. And as I said earlier, I was in Medjugorje, and while I was there, I felt called to write a book on the Divine Mercy. And in fact, the very next day I arrived home, I started writing. And I finished it on the 4th of December, and it's called Come to Me Through Divine Mercy. Just to remind you, I'm still only 18, and I have my book out. But as I was writing, it was as if I held the pen, but the Holy Spirit just wrote. It all came out, and everything just flowed out from that. And then as I was thanking Our Lady on the 8th of December, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, I promised her that my next book would be on Our Lady. I've started writing that book. And back home in Kilkeel, I'm involved in 3 different prayer groups. I'm writing a book, and I've recently started giving talks at a youth mass as well. And I'm scheduled to talk at a Marian conference this summer. And I'm also trying to finish school all through that time as well, in between that. But as I say, and as I like to say to my teachers, I'm a part-time student. I'm a full-time apostle to Divine Mercy. That always comes first. And I also hope to enter seminary this year, so God willing. But please say a little prayer, because there's a psychological test, so I have to pass that, really. They must think, a young person joining the priesthood now, you must be mad. But, well, who knows, you might need some mad people to bring us back to reality. And I think it would be fair to say that my life has changed because of Divine Mercy. I discovered my vocation through Divine Mercy. I discovered who I truly am. I discovered love. I discovered Jesus. My life has a new meaning now, a new horizon because of Divine Mercy. I did not find God. God found me. And I intend on bringing him to others. 5,000 people, not a bad start, but I do intend. Christ gives my life direction, and he gives me hope, and he gave his life for me. I in turn would be honoured to give my life in service of Him. And every time I think about it, about the priesthood and divine mercy and everything, I just get so excited. Even around my house, I would just randomly say, "Are you not excited?" And my sisters and my brothers would say, "What for?" Life, just life. Heaven, God, Mass, divine mercy. Like, are you not excited? Yeah, you sound excited. Come on. I let God into my life, and look what He's done. You also need to let Christ into your lives. We need to remain in His love. We need to place ourselves in His care. We need to trust Him. Let us then see what Christ, our God who loves us, can do with us and for us. In fact, let us start right now. Let us all entrust our lives to the divine mercy by us all proclaiming together, "Jesus, I trust in you." Thank you.
Well done, fantastic, well done. Well done, brilliant, well done, well done.
Now, isn't that something else for an 18-year-old? I tell you, you want to read his book?